Road plaque is still there. We've had a lot of response. We'll come back to that. Stay with RNZ across the evening. Checkpoint with Lisa Owen next and into lately with Karen Hay. Lovely to be with you. I'm back tomorrow, 3:45. Till then, see ya.
Kei te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere ake nei, hundreds of people are being evacuated right now. Most of the North Island's population is under a state of emergency, including Northland, Auckland, Waikato, Thames, Coromandel, Opotiki and Gisborne as Cyclone Gabrielle closes in. Tens of thousands of people in the upper North Island are still without power. Multiple cell phone towers have been taken out too. North Power, Vodafone, Auckland Emergency Management are live with the latest. Dairy farmers are up against it too. No power means spilt milk, with the search on for generators. And we cross to Coromandel, Auckland and Tairawhiti, where the entire coast road, State Highway 35, will close at 7 tonight. Don't forget, you can watch us live on the RNZ website.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Good afternoon. Ahi ahi Māori. I'm Evie Ashton. Hundreds of people have been asked to leave their homes and tens of thousands are without power as Cyclone Gabrielle roars over swathes of the North Island. Whakatāne, Waikato and Hauraki have all declared local states of emergency, and occupants of 100 homes in Ōhope in the Whakatāne district have been told they have to move. And Hawke's Bay has been upgraded from an orange to a red rain warning. Evacuations have been ordered along the entire eastern Bay of Plenty coastline, with the Defence Force helping evacuate a campground near Opotiki. Occupants of as many as 400 properties are being asked to evacuate in the Opotiki district between Waiotahe and East Cape, with another 100 evacuations ordered in the Whakatāne district. People staying at the Tirohanga campground are right now being moved to Opotiki College. Opotiki District Council Incident Controller Gerard McCormack says the worst of the cyclone is due to hit at about the same time as high tide, which could cause serious inundation in the middle of the night.
It's basically all across our coastline, so it covers quite a large area. We've got our colleagues from the Army, FENS and our iwi response units assisting us with door knocking at the moment, and the police will be assisting us later on with as required.
Gerard McCormack says there's a good chance the town could become cut off if there's another slip on State Highway 2. Residents of Onepoto in Wharekahika, Hicks Bay, are evacuating their homes. Police and fire and emergency services are also assisting people evacuating in Tolaga Bay and Te Arai. Owner of Hicks Bay Lodge, Jay McClutchy, says the rain is beating down as people arrive to take shelter.
Yeah, we're looking at least 20, 30 families down in Horseshoe Bay coming up tonight, but then along the Hicks Bay Strait, there's also a river that runs along there, and that's up on the lawn now.
Jay McClutchy says the community is well prepared and extra supplies have been dropped off to the area ahead of the onset of the cyclone. Many North Islanders are being warned to prepare for a night without power as crews grapple with downed lines, broken poles, slips and hazardous conditions. Tens of thousands throughout Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula don't have electricity. Auckland Lines company Vector says it's restored power to thousands of customers, but nearly 13,000 are still without power. Another update is expected at 6:30 tonight. North Power says 15,600 households and businesses are without power and may not get it back for days and, in some cases, a week or more. Far North Lines company Top Energy says about 5,500 customers don't have electricity, down from 14,000 at 4 o'clock this morning. Top Energy says it's progressively restoring power, but it's slow going, and outages are expected to rise again when winds pick up overnight. Northlanders preparing for a week without power are farewelling freezers full of food. About a third of properties in Whangarei and Kaipara had outages today. Lynn Bennett is among those making do on the outskirts of Whangarei, where her road is also cut off.
No water, we have no light, we have really nothing. We do have a gas hob, so we can do things, but we're worried about obviously our freezer because we've been told it could be a week before we get power back on.
Ms Bennett is anxiously waiting to hear if her travel agency office has flooded. People were evacuated from the city centre earlier today before high tide. The government has put up $11.5 million to support NGOs and community groups during Cyclone Gabrielle. The package also includes $4 million to help community providers meet increased demand, $1 million towards replenishing food bank stocks, and $500,000 to support the disabled community. Minister for Social Development and Employment, Kamel Sepuloni, estimates the money will help tens of thousands of people affected by the recent floods and current cyclone. All funds allocated in the package are time limited until the end of June. And State Highway 35 between Te Puia Springs and Ruatoria is now closed. The rest of the highway from Okitsu to Lawton Point is planned to close at 7 o'clock tonight. However, this section could close earlier at short notice due to flooding. In sport, the Kansas City Chiefs have beaten the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35 to win their second Super Bowl in 4 years. Quarterback Patrick Mahomes, who was named Super Bowl MVP, shrugged off an ankle injury to lead the Chiefs to a dramatic win. They trailed 24-14 at halftime, but Mahomes engineered 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns and a final drive for a game-winning field goal with just 8 seconds to play.
Chiefs by 3. Hurts will launch it, and it falls harmlessly away, incomplete. And the Kansas City Chiefs are champions of the world. They win Super Bowl 57.
The Black Caps remain hopeful their first cricket test against England will start as scheduled in Mount Maunganui on Thursday, despite Cyclone Gabrielle lashing the top of the North Island. Heavy rain and 100 km/h plus winds are forecast for Tauranga over the next couple of days, although it's due to fine up on Wednesday. Black Caps coach Gary Stead says the ground will need little time to dry out despite the cyclone.
It's one of the fastest drying grounds I think you'll ever see in the world. It's incredible when it stops raining, you'll just about be able to get out there straight away.
More rain, however, is forecast on Thursday when the day-night test is due to start. And Wu Yaibing has become the first man from China to win an ATP tennis title, beating John Isner to win the Dallas Open. That's the news.
Air. We have a contingency. You can only fit so many planes down in Christchurch, and so what you try and do here is sort of thread the needle.
Earth. Normally you've got the All Blacks and the Box up there at 1 and 2, but it's Ireland and France who top the rankings, and the game delivered.
And lots of water. Somia, the wind sounds like it's causing a few problems for your phone line. I don't know if you're able to find a slightly more sheltered spot.
We're on fire, covering all the elements. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
We're on air, online and on demand through the RNZ app. You're with Lisa Owen next on Checkpoint. Right now, the short forecast as it stands from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. Cyclone Gabrielle is affecting the country, bringing severe weather to northern and central New Zealand. For the northern half of the North Island, from Taranaki and Taihape northwards, also Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa. Rain with heavy falls, especially in the north and east, easing or clearing later tomorrow. Gale east to southeasterlies, but severe gale in many places. Severe gale southwesterlies developing over Northland and Auckland later today, then easing tomorrow. From Whanganui to Wellington, also for Nelson. Occasional rain becoming persistent in Wellington tomorrow. Gale or severe gale southeasterlies tonight and tomorrow morning. For Marlborough, showers turning to rain tonight with heavy falls. Canterbury, cloud increasing. Isolated showers turning to rain tomorrow afternoon or evening. Otago and Southland, also for Bulla, Westland and Fiordland. Mainly fine afternoon. Isolated showers in the afternoons and evenings south of Haast, with possible thunderstorms and downpours for inland Otago and Southland. Areas of fog early in the morning. And for the Chatham Islands, cloud increasing, rain and easterly gales developing tomorrow. It's 8 minutes past 5. I'll have news headlines and traffic for you at 5:20.
Ngā mihi Evie, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Large swathes of the North Island are now under a state of emergency, with many regions feeling the force of Cyclone Gabrielle and a promise of more wild weather on its way. A state of emergency has been declared in Northland, Auckland, Thames Coromandel, Waikato, Opotiki, Tairawhiti and Whakatane as the storm starts to wreak havoc. Evacuations are being recommended in some parts of the east coast. We'll be live across the North Island for the very latest shortly, but we begin our coverage tonight in Northland, where tens of thousands are without power and evacuations are already taking place. Amy Williams reports.
First in line to feel the arrival of Cyclone Gabrielle. Wind gusts have toppled trees and power lines across Northland, where 55 main high voltage lines are damaged. That's half the network. Kirikiri resident Monique Edwards had just told her husband the gum tree in their front yard looked shaky when it crashed through their roof.
There was this almighty bang, crash and jib board falling down, and one piece hit our middle boy in the head. An absolute sense of fear and terror ran through everyone.
They and their 3 sons are staying the night at a friend's house. Further north, Karikari Peninsula resident Povey Moses says last night's wind lifted roofs.
Coming straight on the east coast, you definitely feel it, and there's a few houses that have had their roofs sort of torn off, so we had family up there with tarpaulins and 4x6 pieces of wood and nail guns, and then people with generators.
In Whangarei, Civil Defence says there's a high risk of tidal flooding in the CBD and the town basin, and residents are urged to evacuate. Cindy Bedgood and her family are staying at the Mackay Stadium Evacuation Centre, concerned the creek near her house could flood.
My house is at the lowest point of that area where we'll be the first to go if it came over the wall. And when I left the house this morning, I went to check on it. The water was right up to the wall, but hadn't come over onto my property. I'm glad we were here.
Most businesses in Whangarei town closed today, including those along the Hātea riverfront at the town basin. Lloyd Rooney owns 3 bars and restaurants there and has sandbags in place, but doubts it'll be enough.
I've never seen a river as high as this before. And I've seen the river ooze in Lewis when it overflowed as high as this. I was there for that. But never in New Zealand have I seen a river as high as I'm looking at now, the Hātea River.
He's concerned about the next high tide at 2 o'clock in the morning. Met Service expects storm surges and large swells. Chris Davenport and his partner live aboard a 43-foot yacht currently moored in the Bay of Islands. They didn't get much sleep last night, worrying about the cyclone.
The wind has come round in the evening and moderated somewhat more from the southeast. I expect it might get windier again later on, but we're keeping a close eye on things.
Residents on Great Barrier Island are totally cut off, with high seas and strong winds getting worse. A publican has welcomed anyone stranded on the island to stay in the pub, and it's full. Orla Comiskey from the Curragh Irish pub says the noise from the wind gusts is quite scary, but everyone inside is safe.
The winds have been roaring, and every now and again the whole pub is silenced by a shudder that goes through the building as a huge gust goes through. You know, the outside there's a carpet of leaves and small branches in our garden, but I understand that there are trees down all over the place.
She plans to make a seafood chowder for anyone who needs a safe place to stay.
I think we'll probably have a few pints, which is probably a good idea, and we'll cook up a feast and probably head to bed relatively early and listen to Mother Nature flexing her muscles.
Hunkering down for a wild night.
That report from Amy Williams. Well, Auckland Emergency Management Duty Controller Rachel Callagher joins us now. Tēnā koe, Rachel. What should we be watching for now and overnight?
Well, right now we should be watching out for the rain. So between 3 p.m. this afternoon and 3 a.m. Tomorrow morning is when we're expecting the heaviest of the rain to come through. It's likely to be patchy, but certainly heavy in places in a way that could be impactful.
Okay, so heavy in places. Who's going to get the worst of it?
Well, unfortunately, our Met Service colleagues can't get to that level of prediction. So really the message is it could be region-wide, but it's not likely to affect everybody in the same way.
Rachel, what can you tell us about the power situation in the Auckland region?
So obviously one of the issues that we were concerned about with this event was the wind. We've got a bit of a lull at the moment, but that's going to whip up again overnight and throughout tomorrow. But with the saturated grounds we've got, that wind combined with those wet soils is bringing trees down, and of course trees and power lines don't mix. So some big outages right across the whole of the region, and we know that the teams out there at Vector and Counties Energy are working hard to reinstate power, but some of that's really difficult places to get to, and they need to look after the safety of their workers.
I know you were concerned about cracks in existing slips. Has any more of that land given way where you gave, I think it was 800 households notice to, be careful leading up to this event?
That's right. We haven't had to do any evacuations of properties at this point in time, but we're certainly reminding people that they need to stay vigilant in areas where there has been slips or land subsidence. So, any of those sorts of signs that you described, like, new cracks in the ground, cracks in internal walls, strange sounds, we really encourage people to take that precautionary approach and find alternative shelter, at least until after the heavy rain is finished.
What role are the Defence Force playing?
They've been amazing. They've been supporting us and also our neighbouring regions throughout this event in terms of preparedness work, so helping with our work to clear flood-affected materials from our curbsides, but also helping with the provisioning and the setting up, and also having some staff on site at our civil defence centres and shelters.
Rachel, you would have heard some of the chatter out there. Some people are saying, it's a fizzer, there's nothing happening in my neighbourhood. What do you say to them?
Gosh, and I hope it stays that way, but I would be saying, don't be complacent. What we've heard from Met Service is that the winds are going to pick up, and that those people who might not have experienced those winds yet could certainly be feeling that tomorrow. So, and that could bring some additional damage that we haven't seen at this time. So, please don't think that because you haven't felt it yet that it's not going to come for you. Everyone just be on watch, look out for any signs of danger, and if necessary, take the precautionary steps to get yourself to a safe place.
Ngā mihi motoa. Thank you so much for your time. That's Rachel Callagher, who is the Auckland Emergency Management Duty Controller. 5:15. Kia mau tunu mai. Do stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. And thousands of homes and businesses are without power in Auckland, Whangarei and Kaipara in Northland. And joining me now is Kaipara and Whangarei District Lines Company North Power CEO Andrew McLeod. Andrew, can you bring us up to date? What are your current numbers, people without power?
Kia ora, Lisa. We've got about 15,000 families off at the moment. This morning we're up to around 20,000. So that's about, we're at about a quarter of everyone who's connected at the moment are off. Really difficult conditions up here, very high winds, very wet. We've had about 150 people of our construction crews out there just working continuously to fix things. But as quickly as we can fix them, we're finding that we're getting more damage behind us. A lot of it is trees, as the earlier speaker said. Wet, high winds. These trees are just falling over straight through our lines.
Andrew, I just want to make sure I heard you right then. So approximately 25% of your customers are without power at the moment.
That's right, yes. And they were off, a good number of those customers were off last night as well. I heard earlier you mentioned, you were talking about potential fizzer in Auckland. We've been watching Auckland as well. We thought that yesterday afternoon, nothing much was happening. Then all of a sudden the winds came in. They hit hard from late afternoon right through the night. Before we knew it, we had 10% of our customers off. Then it went to 20% of our customers off overnight. And we've been fighting every hour today to hold it at that level. These are severe winds. And with this wet rain and wet soil, it's just a very, very hard situation.
Sounds a bit like whack-a-mole for you guys.
It is a little bit. One step forward, one step back. We've got a lot of people mobilised. We've got huge construction capability. We're just waiting for these winds to die down so we can start to get some forward progress, because it literally is that. As fast as we're fixing things, they're breaking.
Andrew, how much do you need the wind to die back? I mean, where's the kind of mark in the sand where you go, okay, nobody out over that level?
We've got people out anyway. The winds up here are about 70 k's an hour, sort of constant, with gusts over the 100. So we just can't put people up in the air, up ladders, up in big bucket trucks and the like. We can do work on the ground. We can do what we can. We did have a few hours off this afternoon where the winds died down a bit. We made some good progress, but they seem to have picked up again. And the forecast is that the winds are going to spin around us. So they've been from the east, they're going to go to the south and then the southwest. What happens with trees is if you hit them from a different direction, the ones that haven't fallen often fall. So it's quite a hard weather pattern to traverse.
Are there any particular pockets?
Well, no, our outage map is right across the board. East Coast got hit really hard, so Helena Bay, some of those coastal towns, Tutukaka, up that coast, big seas, a lot of vegetation through lines up through there, very difficult. But there's nowhere in the Kaipara and around Whangarei that hasn't been hit, including in town. I had a good drive around today. We've just got big trees that have been there forever. Suddenly decided to tilt over through our power lines.
So ahead of this big storm, were you out or able to do any prep work to make sure that your network was as resilient as it could be?
Yeah, we've put a lot of money into this network. It's a strong network. We had all of our resources stood up from Friday because it'd been great forecasting. We knew this event was coming. So in terms of preparation, nothing more we could have done. We've got full workforce available. Really, it's just the fact that this has hit us hard and broken a lot of things all at once. When the winds get above 120, 150 k's an hour and they're throwing trees through power lines, doesn't matter how strong the power lines are, they just get busted down. And then our job becomes recovering it and just rebuilding them.
What about broadband and fibre?
No problems at the moment. The great thing about broadband and fibre, they're under the ground, so they don't get blown over and the trees don't affect them. So the problem, of course, if your power's off at home, you ain't got much broadband. So families get hit twice.
Really appreciate your time, Andrew. Best of luck. That is Andrew McLeod, who's the CEO of North Power, Kaipara and Whangarei District Lines Company. There, about a quarter of their customers are without power. And while we were talking, Ross has got in touch to say, first tree just hit the side of my house from the neighbours, a mature manuka, saved by my own cabbage tree, which took the hit. Good on that cabbage tree. It's getting rough in Titirangi, says Ross. Well, stay safe. It is 5:20 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Homai o whakaaro, we would love your feedback on anything you've heard on the program this evening. Well, a large percentage of the population of the North Island under state of emergency orders. Let us know if you've got power in your place. If your phone's still working, drop us a text 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. We'd love to hear how you are doing. It is time for us to go to the headlines. Ko iwi anō tēnei.
Whakatāne, Waikato and Hauraki have all declared local states of emergency amid Cyclone Gabrielle, and residents of 100 homes in Ohope in the Whakatāne district have been told they have to move. Hawke's Bay has been upgraded from an orange to a red rain warning. Waka Kotahi is warning drivers in Taranaki, especially those in high-sided vehicles, to be prepared for strong winds and heavy rain tonight. Met Service has issued a 24-hour strong wind warning from 6 o'clock and a heavy rain warning from 7 until midday tomorrow. Kiwi Rail says it's closing rail lines down the North Island. Auckland lines are shut, and tonight Kiwi Rail will also close lines from Napier, Taranaki and Palmerston North down to Waikanae. It says the Wellington rail network will remain open. The government's announced $11.5 million in extreme weather aid to help fix infrastructure, replenish food banks and to support staff and volunteers. Prime Minister Chris Hipkins says nearly 25,000 people have been provided with food, clothing and shelter, but demand is huge. The death toll from the earthquakes that struck Turkey and Syria has passed 34,000. Rescuers are still finding survivors 6 days after the disaster, including a 7-month-old baby and a 12-year-old girl. And the Kansas City Chiefs have won the Super Bowl for the second time in 4 years. They beat the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35 at the State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Pop star Rihanna provided the halftime concert. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic now. If you're in the North Island, you've been advised not to travel unless it's essential. If you live in Northland or the Coromandel or Tairāwhiti, there are many slips and roads flooded out. I won't go through them all, but you need to check with Waka Kotahi's journey planner if you have to go somewhere. In Wellington at Newlands, a bus breakdown after the Newlands off-ramp on State Highway 1 in the northbound left lane is slowing traffic down. I will have more news headlines and traffic for you at 5:40.
Kia ora rā, e ho. Parts of the Coromandel have been without power for almost 24 hours as rough seas and heavy rain continues to pound the coastline. State Highway 25 between Hukuai and Tairua is now closed due to flooding, and Waka Kotahi is warning essential travel only through to Whitianga due to multiple slips and debris blocking the roads there. Our reporter Leonard Powell joins us live from the St Francis Church on Main Road in Tairua. Kia ora, Leonard.
Kia ora, Lisa. How are you going?
I'm very well. Tell us about where you are.
Well, I'm sat here in the St Francis Church in Tairua, 248 on the main street, and it's been set up as a civil defence and evacuation centre, and it's also the base for the search and rescue crew. So it's open 24 hours. There's a community response group of locals who are volunteering. There's about 12 of them in rotation, and Māori wardens in place here overnight. So it's open all hours for people to evacuate. There's tea, coffee, snacks, charging stations. So far, no one's actually evacuated here in Tairua. Many people have moved from their places due to flooding next to the harbour, but those people are actually moving in with friends and family at higher ground. It's a very tight-knit community. There's a lot of people who are putting out offers of help on the local Facebook page and that sort of thing. So people, no one's come to the evacuation centre yet to evacuate. There is people coming to use the services here. However, concern is high tide's approaching at 1:55 tomorrow morning, and the flooding, which is pretty high as it is, it's definitely set to get worse. So this could well be a place people are coming to in the night.
Hey, Lenny, looking out and about there, what can you see in terms of the weather? Describe it to us.
Sure, yeah. So all day since waking up, the rain's been coming in sideways. It's the type of weather where you wouldn't bother with an umbrella because it'll just get blown out of your hands. The wind is super strong. I was actually, the one saving grace, if you could call it that, I was helping a resident move some furniture off a deck that was flooding next to a stream on Ocean Beach Road, and he commented that at least the water of the flooding isn't cold. That's the one positive in this situation is he wasn't getting cold feet when he was moving stuff. But yeah, the it's getting worse as the day's gone on, and if the forecast is anything to go by, the worst is still yet to arrive. So pretty foul down here. It's good to be inside.
Are the shops or, local convenience open, or what's the story?
So there's a convenience store which is open, but everywhere is without power down here. The power went out at about 9 o'clock yesterday night, and for some places even earlier, and it hasn't come back on yet. And there's no real shops open. The main store here is the Four Square, which is closed, and there's no deliveries happening north of Waihi. So with the road closures, the shops are closed. People having to make do with the supplies that they've got. The main street, the liquor store was open, but again without power. So there's a few cash businesses going on. The hardware did the same thing. They were taking cash, but there's no shops. And the big concern here, Lisa, is there's no way that the helicopter could land if there was an emergency. And with the roads closed between Whitianga through to Hukuai, it's really dire straits if someone was to get struck by something or need emergency services. It's really not available at the moment.
Understand. Thank you for the update, Leonard. Ngā mihi. That's Leonard Powell, our reporter, who was at the St Francis Church on Main Road in Tairua there. Tairawhiti has been put under a red weather warning, and evacuations are being recommended in several areas around the east coast. A state of emergency is also in place. The Deputy Civil Defence Officer at Tolaga Bay, Nori Parata, joins us now. Kia ora, kei te pēhea koe. How are you doing?
Kia ora, kei te pai.
Yeah, so what is happening with the evacuations, Nori? Can you tell us?
Yes, the areas that are most prone to the flooding or the first to flood, they all self-evacuated yesterday and today, this morning. But as the day's gone on and the weather has really deteriorated, we have moved to evacuate 3 other areas, Wharekaka, Pāroa and Kaioa Road, and we've just done that in the last couple of hours, and it's their last opportunity to get out before we won't be able to get to them at all.
So how have you got in there now? Are you in four-wheel drives, and how many households are we talking about?
Four-wheel drive, and we're talking about 15 to 20 households. That would be in those three areas. Some people had already self-evacuated, but these are people that they've sort of been here forever, and, a lot of them are making comparisons about how they were okay in Vola. So it also tells you the age of who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They're not being stubborn, but they are being passively resistant, some of them.
So have you been encouraging them along?
Yes, we have been encouraging them along, and some of our civil defence team and a couple of the police that have been stationed here have gone to be quite firm in their encouragement to leave, and most of them are leaving. There were only 3 that we are still a little concerned about whether they will actually move or not.
So tell us about your bridges, because you've had problems with them in the past, right? So tell us about Wigram Bridge and the bridge at Uawa. What's that like?
Wigan Bridge was closed around, I think we had it closed around lunchtime. It was very unsafe in the sense that the water was coming over it, and of course the slashes backed up there again. That is the only bridge that we were seriously concerned about today. But of course the Hikuwai River is over 13 metres now. It will have breached its banks, and the State Highway 35 will be flooded.
Hey, I'm looking at some pictures while we're talking, and it's of all of the debris, wood, floating down the river again. What's it like in terms of that?
It's soul-destroying, actually. That's exactly what it is. The beach has only just recently had a partial clean-up, and when you watch the live cam on the Hikuwai River and see how much new slash is coming down, it's pretty soul-destroying, but it also means that we do need to monitor the main bridge in town just to ensure that it doesn't back up there so much that it becomes a hazard.
You mentioned State Highway 25, right? So 35, rather.
No,
the coast.
35.
Yes, 35, the coast road.
Yeah.
And that is closing from 7 tonight, as I understand it, between Opotiki and Gisborne. Is some of that a precaution and some of that damage?
State Highway 35 from Tolaga further up the coast to Ruatoria has been closed since about 1 or 2 o'clock this afternoon, and but it has been still open between here and Gisborne, but we have at times wondered about whether that should have been the case. But nonetheless, Waka Kotahi will close that at 7 o'clock tonight. So, from Gisborne round to Lawton Point will be closed. Well, or Opotiki actually, yeah.
Really appreciate
and not before time, I might add.
Appreciate your time, Nori. Best of luck. That's Nori Parata, who's the Deputy Civil Defence Officer there, based at Tolaga Bay, and evacuations underway there, as she says, encouraging some people who need a bit of encouragement. It is 29 minutes to 6. Kia mau tonu mai. Do stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. It is time for the business news now. Ko taku hoa e nai nei, ko Nona Peltier, who joins me live in the studio. Nona, let's start with Fletcher Building. It surprised the market with a downgrade on its first half-year profit.
Yeah, so the market was expecting about to 126 million for the 6 months ended December. Companies come back and said about 92 million. That compares with 171 million the year earlier. But there's more bad news than that, because in January and February, which is post the balance date, the company said that it's been severely impacted by the weather that's affected its sales volumes, housing, and so forth. So overall, the company was expecting to make a full year underlying profit of something like 855 million. Now they've widened that to say, well, it could be as low as 800 million, and that's a $55 million drop in the where it was sitting before. So overall, the market wasn't too happy with that, and the share price fell 5%. That dragged down the NZX Top 50 Index. We ended down 0.9%. It was a drop of 104 points to 12,075. And we also heard from the services sector today.
Yeah, you did. So expanding at a faster pace than what? Faster than expected? Or
well, faster than it has been.
Yeah.
It's not been very good. Main reason is more labor. more labour in the market. So that's eased some of those supply issues that the market had been experiencing with service sector staff and so on. However, there's more negative comments now than there were before. So even though we're in expansion and manufacturing is also expanding, the market commentary is still rather negative and increasingly so. So the New Zealand dollar is steady, not changed really. 63 US cents from where we were before. 91.2 Australian, exactly the same. And 52.3 British pence.
Thank you, Nona. Nona Peltier there with business news. Meanwhile, in Auckland, the city's quickly become a ghost town once again as businesses shut up shop and people follow instructions to work from home. Most schools in Auckland closed today in anticipation of the wild weather. Our reporter Louise Tanuth and camera operator Marika Habazi went to check out the city.
Empty motorways in Auckland CBD on a Monday morning. Closed due to the weather, signs fill windows down Fort Street. Lights are off and chairs and tables stacked away. It's the second Monday this year that Auckland's looked like this, a weather-related close for business. But not everyone's shut up shop. Ali's Cafe is desperate for whatever business they can get today, with the rest of the week uncertain as Cyclone Gabrielle inches closer.
Today was very quiet. About 1 hour or less than 1 hour is very quiet, but we'll still have a regulars coming in early morning.
Barista Mia Gion says many of the regulars who work in the CBD haven't been back into the office since flooding 2 weeks ago. Others simply couldn't commute without public transport running as usual.
This kind of weather, of course, you're going to working from home, and the harbour is only 2 lanes open, and all the train is cancelled early morning. And ferry is not working, obviously, so who's going to come down to the city?
Train services remain suspended across Auckland today, and there's also been severe disruptions to the ferry timetables. Bus services are running, but do expect some detours, delays and cancellations. Auckland Transport later confirmed commuter ferry services are now also cancelled for the rest of the evening. Sim's Kitchen is on Fort Street in downtown Auckland, and it's usually closed here on Mondays. Tomorrow they'll shut their Onihanga restaurant, but they're aiming to open their CBD restaurant. Owner Doris says it's been difficult to get hold of ingredients from their usual suppliers in the dangerous weather.
Today I'm trying to order some stock for coming tomorrow. So basically 2 of my suppliers, they close half day because of the bad weather. So they don't want to take a risk, they say they just closed. I think tomorrow they close too.
They've had to scramble to get the goods they need by ringing around other suppliers. She says they need to remain open to pay their staff.
Not that staff fault. This is your decision. You close, so you still have to pay them. Yeah, you have to go by the rules, yeah.
Throughout town, it was a similar story. Just a handful of shops and cafes open on a far from bustling Ponsonby Road. In Mission Bay, winds were starting to pick up, with many Aucklanders out for a bit of fresh air. Battling the rain, but the wind was already too much for umbrellas.
Yeah, it's weird. Look, it's like a ghost town. Nobody's anywhere. It's a bit scary, to be honest.
I think we're all kind of used to staying home a little bit and then getting out, to go for a walk along and see everything. Well, I mean, it's kind of picking up now a little bit, but this is not much really to see so far, but really it's a waiting game.
Just see how it goes, and hopefully come Wednesday, Thursday, the weather's a bit better. So, yeah, maybe get the sun cream out, you never know.
Hope for some sunny weather, just maybe.
And if you were listening to that piece on radio, do check out the video version. It'll be on our webpage. And our reporter Tom Taylor joins us now from Red Beach in North Auckland. Kia ora, Tom. How is it there now?
Kia ora, Lisa. Well, it's quite wet. There are a lot of surfers out here at Red Beach who are making the most of the big swells here, though. There's dozens of them just behind me in the water. As we've been travelling around today, the mood's really been a kind of a wait and see from a lot of people. Unpredictable is probably the word that I would use. The rain's really set in for 10 minutes at a time, then eased off, and then just started lashing us again.
And so how are residents feeling?
So residents, we went to Orewa Beach just earlier, and residents milling around there were kind of taking it all in, taking photos down at the shoreline, even as big swells were washing over the street. We checked in at the Whangaparoa evacuation centre that's been established at Stanmore Bay. There's not too many people there at the moment, just a handful of people who were worried about their homes and a few more checking in for hot showers if they've had power off. But they are prepared there to take on more tonight if needed. Look, the mood is really a kind of a wait and see. Lots of businesses around Orewa taking that approach. We spoke to the owner of the Ship and Anchor restaurant, Raj Shug. Here's what he had to say.
Yes, it is scary, but you have to make your living. I have my 2 young kids to look after. I just got a home recently, so I have to pay a mortgage. This is also on lease, so you have to pay a rent also. Plus I got staff, so you have to pay the staff also. So you can't afford to stay closed all the time. So yes, I'm taking a risk and I have to stay open, hoping there's a live spot and will bring lots of people, but nah.
What will it take tonight? When will you make the call to close up?
At least not yet, but we'll see. We always keep in watch on weather update, and if I think, yes, it's going to be not safe for me, for my staff, or for the patrons, then yes, we'll stay close, yeah.
So, Tom, when is the worst of the weather coming for Auckland?
Yeah, so Met Service said this afternoon that we were about halfway through the storm, so there's still quite a bit to come here. This evening we're still expected to get a lot of rain. There is a lot of rain just situated off the coast of New Zealand at the moment, and there is still that heavy red rain warning in place. That may only happen in pockets around Auckland, so you may not see the worst of it where you are, but it will be coming and could cause landslides or flooding in some areas, things to be aware of there. The cyclone's kind of centred around Great Barrier Island at the moment, so they could be in for a pretty rough night of it. Another thing the Met Service is telling people to look out for is another high tide coming up around 2 a.m. tonight, and that is going to be a point where we may see some storm surges, especially on these eastern beaches of Auckland, like Orewa and indeed here at Red Beach.
Thanks for that, Tom. That's Tom Taylor, who's joining us live from Red Beach in North Auckland. There are a few people out and about surfing, even though they've been told to be very careful about surges in the waves. It is 20 minutes to 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. And let's get to some of your feedback now. Some of you getting in touch with your observations about what's going on in your part of the motu. Cindy says 80 millimetres since 10 a.m. in Piha and getting heavier. Trees down over roads. Power's been out since 1 p.m. If I had a good battery power pack, I could turn on my modem and have Wi-Fi. Expecting a Spark cell tower to run out of battery soon and will be completely cut off, says Cindy. No power in Kaiō, this listener says. Very strong winds in exposed places. And from Eskdale in Napier, the Esk River north of Napier is running very high, not far below the top of the banks, and the big rain is yet to arrive. Going to be interesting couple of days. Stay safe, Aotearoa, says Steve from Eskdale. Thanks for getting in touch. And this one from the south, Linley says, hello from Te Anau. Hi. It is unbelievable that we are in the same country. 27 degrees in a smooth lake with no wind. A few summer clouds only. Don't skite, Linley. Get in touch with your feedback, 2101 on text. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ and the email address checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It is time to go to Evie in the headlines now. Anea Evie, mena pita kōrero.
Met Service says Cyclone Gabrielle's rain and high winds will heavily batter the North Island tonight, bringing coastal swells. Northland, Auckland and Coromandel will be most affected. North Power says 15,000 of its customers, about a quarter, are without power tonight in the Kaipara and Whangarei districts. Kiwi Rail has cancelled inter-islander sailings for 24 hours from 2 o'clock tomorrow morning. The cancellations affect 12 sailings. It says Picton Port is closed until 10 o'clock tomorrow night. Kiwi Rail has also closed Auckland rail lines and will tonight shut the lines from Napier, Taranaki and Palmerston North down to Waikanai. The Ministry of Health is reporting 8,396 new COVID-19 cases in the last week, including 3,508 reinfections. 32 people have died with COVID in the last week, bringing the total number of attributed deaths to 2,513. Indonesia's Vice President Ma'ruf Amin has called for better safeguards for civilian flights into Papua after rebel fighters abducted New Zealand pilot Philip Mertens. A joint security team is continuing its search for Mr Mertens in a mountainous jungle area. The West Papua Liberation Army has claimed responsibility. And 2 new extinct penguin species have been discovered from fossils collected in North Otago. One is thought to be the largest penguin ever discovered, with an estimated average weight of 155 kilograms. The fossils, between 59.5 and 55.5 million years old, were collected from sea-washed boulders in North Otago during 2016 and 2017. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic now. If you're in the North Island, you're advised not to travel unless you absolutely have to. There are many slips, flooded roads, and now fallen trees in Northland, Auckland, Coromandel, and on the east coast, Tairāwhiti. Check Waka Kotahi's journey planner before you drive. From 7 p.m. tonight, State Highway 2, Napier to Wairoa, will be closed, as well as State Highway 35 from Okatu to Opotiki. Our next news bulletin, including weather, is at 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Evie. Residents in low-lying areas of Tairāwhiti have been urged to evacuate as the rain intensifies. People in Hikawai, Tolaga Bay, and Te Arai Manutuke, as well as Onepoto residents at Wharekahika or Hicks Bay, have all been advised to move out. A state of emergency is in place and a red weather warning has been issued. Our reporter Kate Green is there.
Evacuation centres down the coast of Tairāwhiti have been set up and will be activated tonight. The rising water level of the Hikawai River has been a concern for most of the day, and it's being monitored closely by Tairāwhiti Civil Defence. It's advising residents at risk of flooding to voluntarily leave their homes before nightfall, with river levels expected to peak overnight. Dion Milner owns the Uwawa Holiday Park near Tolaga Bay. He says flooding is a real possibility, with his grounds already sodden from previous rainfall.
It all leads into the Uwawa, and it is a big catchment, and just the nature, if you're by a big river, it's all this kind of weather. When it rains, it's going to happen.
Mr Milner closed the campground to tourists in anticipation of the storm, but 5 permanent residents live on site.
I've had the fuel truck in this morning, so I've got plenty of diesel, plenty for my big gen set to run the camp. I do have permanents here, but I give them plenty of warning in advance. They've got their stuff ready if we have to evacuate, which will be going to Hauti Marae.
Dan Russell, a farmer from Puketiti Station, just inland from Tapuia Springs, says Cyclone Gabrielle is one of the strongest storms he's seen in 20 years.
Our beach house here is 6 metres above the sea, and they're saying 7 to 8 metre waves, so I'll have to put my gumboots on before I go to bed tonight, I feel.
He's also worried about the river rising.
We were looking at the Hikawai River bridge there at Willow Flat, and I've watched that come up about 5 or 6 metres this morning. Looks like it's got about 3 metres to go before it hits the bottom of the bridge, and the amount of detritus and stuff that is just logs and things floating down there is alarming, to say the least.
Federated Farmers says the weather makes it hard for farmers to be financially resilient. Provincial President for Gisborne and Wairoa, Charlie Reynolds, says repeatedly fixing slips and broken fences and working sodden land is expensive.
Yeah, it pretty much hasn't stopped raining, and people kind of laugh, but it kind of hasn't. We get a couple of weeks of fine break, and then all of a sudden you'll get another 50 to 100 mil. Just constant. I mean, take my main crossing out onto the farm. I just only finished rebuilding it for the 5th time on Auckland anniversary weekend. I've just gone down and the whole thing's been blown out.
Woody debris has been seen floating down the Hikawai today, raising concerns about damaging forestry slash. During Cyclone Hail last month, forestry slash clogged waterways caused damage to farms, properties and infrastructure in Tairāwhiti. The Eastland Wood Council, which speaks for the Eastland region's forestry industry, says forestry contractors worked to clear potential impact sites ahead of the arrival of Cyclone Gabrielle today. It says their forestry and roading contractors have been stood down due to the worsening weather, but they will remobilise when it's passed.
Kate Green reporting there, and in the last few minutes, Tairawhiti Civil Defence has announced all schools will be closed tomorrow and 2 welfare centres will be open from 6 o'clock tonight at Ilminster Intermediate and the House of Breakthrough Church. Let's go now to our reporter Jimmy Ellingham, who joins us live from near Opotiki, where evacuations have been recommended. Kia ora, Jimmy, what's happening there?
Kia ora, I'm at the Tirohanga Beach Motor Camp, which is about 5 kilometres out of Opotiki. There's a state of emergency declared by the Opotiki District Council, and Civil Defence staff are going door to door in some low-lying areas around the Eastern Bay of Plenty town. Perhaps about 450 to maybe 500 households are going to get a knock on the door saying you should perhaps think about leaving this evening, as there's a high tide here expected about 1:30 a.m. At the motor camp itself, where I am, it's a wee bit above sea level, but there's still that threat from those high tides. About 50 to 60 people are here. Some of them are permanent residents. I've spoken to some who are permanent residents and some who are here on holidays, such as Andrea and Pat Tutoa, and they're from between Napier and Wairoa. And the people I've spoken to said they're going to go to higher ground tonight, spend the night in four-wheel drives in their vehicles with their provisions to keep an eye on things. There are evacuation centres open in the district, but the people at the motor camp, they're concerned about their belongings as well, so they don't want to go too far. They don't want to stray too far away from the camp.
Jimmy, you touched on it, but what are the specific warnings for tonight? And also, what's the weather looking like right now?
At the moment, the weather's not too bad. It is wet here. It is raining. It was raining quite heavily about 5 o'clock, but that's eased off. The wind isn't too bad. There's a bit of a breeze. It's not too strong, but 1:30 a.m. is expected to be the high tide, and that's expected to hit those low-lying areas from Whangaparoa and Waiotahi. State Highway 35 between Opotiki and Gisborne will be closed from 7 p.m. tonight, as it is expected that the water could affect some of those areas and potentially the road as well.
Thanks for that, Jimmy. That's Jimmy Ellingham, who is live from near Opotiki, where evacuations are being recommended. It is almost 10 minutes to 6. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Cindy Bedgood and her whānau are preparing to spend a second night at the evacuation centre at Mackay Stadium and Whangarei after the gentle stream behind her house turned into a raging torrent of water.
I was watching the creek that I live next door to. That's in Avenues, and we're right at the end of the road, and so we're the lowest part of that area, so we get all the runoff coming down there. And there's a little creek, well, it was a little creek, but it's like a raging river at the moment. And I was watching it getting higher and higher, almost up to it was about a metre away from my fence, so it got worse. It's come right up to the fence, and this morning we went down there. I went to have a look, and it's just not safe for me to go home.
So who did you have to get out of the house? How many people?
My 4 kids, my 4 adult children. I have 3 children, 18 and 22, and my grandson, who's 14.
Got a few animals with you?
Yeah, our 3 dogs. They're big dogs, and our cat, Haru.
That's a lot of people and animals to shift, Cindy.
Yeah. We had 2 cars, and I'm used to, because I'm a mother of 7, 8 with Hayley. I'm used to when, my husband would go fishing or camping, just getting the kids ready, or going off on our church camps, and I'd get the kids ready and make sure everybody's gear's okay, and make sure they've got all the food, the blankets, hair conditioner, everything. So I was prepared. I got myself prepared a few days ahead.
Good on you. And so what were you able to take with you? Have you got enough food? What did you pack?
Yeah, I packed bacon. I cooked a casserole, a lamb casserole yesterday. So we had a massive meal to bring with us. But before we left the house, I bought bacon. What else did we have? Salmon. We're well stocked, me and my kids, and we couldn't cook while we were up here because the stadium people don't want any cooking because it could set the sprinklers off, which is fair enough. And I said, oh, no, that's fine. We're able to just go up the road. We have money, we have cars, and we're able. There's other people that aren't as fortunate as we are.
And the house, Cindy, do you know how far the water has gone, whether it's got into the place?
No, our garage has had about a centimetre of water in it, and it's the length of our house, and that water came from the driveway, and it's just run off from my section, and I don't have a drain there to take that water down to the creek. But the creek next to my house has come right up, and it might be about a metre away from the fence line. So I don't know how it is this afternoon. This morning I went, and it was about a metre away from the fence line. So once it gets up to that wall, then I know it's going to get into the basement of our house.
Seen anything like this before?
Well, no, not this severe. Yeah. We lived in Hunua when we had Cyclone Gabrielle, and I remember that. We got stuck up in our place in Hunua, so... And if this is anything to be compared to Cyclone Gabrielle, this is scary. Because Whangarei is right by the water, and so everything's flooding downtown.
And that was Cindy Betchgood, who, with her whānau, evacuated last night, spending her second night in an evacuation centre in Whangarei. Vodafone is dealing with dozens of cell sites down across the North Island. The company's Chief Technology Officer, Tony Baird, is with us now. Tony, can you bring us up to date, please? How many towers have you got that have got problems?
Kia ora, hi. Firstly, we're thinking obviously of everybody affected by the cyclone, and hope everybody's taking care and looking after their whānau and staying bunkering down until the storm passes. Before I get into the numbers, I guess the key thing for us is to make sure that we do everything we can to keep the country connected, but still maintaining health and safety of our staff and contractors that are going out to these sites. It's pretty rough out there for people trying to maintain equipment, getting power connected and reconnected. We've got across the regions affected 62 cell sites, currently down with about around 35 running on battery backup. It's very fluid at the moment with the power supplies. It's basically every cell site's been affected by the electricity supply getting to those cell sites.
So, Tony, sorry to interrupt, but to be clear, is the issue that power to the sites are cut off, or that the towers themselves have been damaged in some way?
No, the towers themselves are fine. It's electricity supply is our primary and only concern at this stage. We've got batteries run typically around 8 hours, and once they expire, you either have a generator on site, which we pre-deployed a number of generators ahead of the storm. We've got about 20 generators out there. The diesel on the generators typically runs for 12 plus hours, so we need a diesel roster to replace the diesel on the generators. So it's really every site is down. That is down is due to the electricity supply.
So those 62 that are down, how widespread are they geographically?
Yeah, geographically, the majority of them that are down, 44 of them are in Northland. So Northland is predominantly the most affected. The second biggest impacted area is Coromandel with 6. And then Auckland with 8. But in the case of Auckland and Waikato's got 4 down. There's a lot of overlapping cell sites. When I say overlapping, you'll pick up coverage from a nearby cell site, whereas Northland has some cell sites, for instance, rural connectivity cell sites at the edge of the network, so you will lose coverage.
So, Tony, given that massive spread that you've got there, and, you know, it's sod's law, isn't it, that Northland's got the most down and Coromandel, which have real access issues, right, without your high winds and all the rest of it. Getting someone there with your diesel fill up, is that causing you some problems?
It is. Nighttime operation is obviously dangerous. Wind, it's a big effort. The team's working 24/7. I'm at our exchange at the moment in central Auckland. We have major data centres in most of the cities, so I'm at one of those. And you can see We've got the rosters going, we've got people monitoring, working with the power authorities and lines companies, doing everything we can to reconnect the sites.
So Northland, the companies up that way, have told us that maybe 2-3 days, because the winds are too high, as you point out, to go and fix the power lines. How will customers be experiencing this problem? What will they see? Will they simply not be able to put calls in, or will they be slightly ropier than normal?
So it really depends. Firstly, the way a cell site's built, we have what's called radio frequencies. I mean, you're transmitting on a radio frequency now. The lower the radio frequency, the further the communication path goes. So we're prioritising on the cell sites the radio frequencies that will go the furthest to allow people to make phone calls and get lower speed data services. We're shedding radio frequencies that are used for higher capacity broadband, like streaming Netflix, for instance, might be degraded, but you'll still be able to make a phone call. It really just depends on where you are and how isolated you are. And as I said, Northland is the most impacted because of that.
And Tony, an important question that people will want to know, what if you're wanting to call 111 on your cell phone? Is it still working?
Well, if you've got no coverage, no bars, obviously there's an issue. The way the 111 service works is if you have any bars of any operator, be it 2 Degrees, Spark or Vodafone, you will be able to make a 111 call. It works on anybody's network. We also have Vodafone has Wi-Fi calling, so if you can call on Wi-Fi, you can make 111 calls, and obviously on your fixed line services, you can make 111. Although I do notice that some of the fixed line services are down around the Dargaville area, so that some of the chorus services are being impacted. So we're seeing other issues now.
You got a big job ahead of you, Tony. All the best. That is Tony Baird, who's the Chief Technology Officer for Vodafone. There are about 62 cell site towers are down, and it's because the power is out. Now, Cindy from Piha's got back in touch. Vector's got the power back on in Piha. Yay, Cindy. Let's celebrate the small wins. Absolute heroes, says Cindy. Someone from Glen Innes has got in touch to say weather is full-on wild at Glen Innes as we speak. Terry is wondering what's going on with the Sky Tower, if it's handling the storm with high winds and bad flooding. Well, last time we checked out our window, it looked okay, holding up. Peter says livestock losses may be a worry now. Yep, more on that stuff after 6.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Ngā mihi o te pō. Good evening. Ko Evacuations tēnei. 8 regions have now declared local states of emergency because of the risk from Cyclone Gabrielle, and hundreds of people are being urged to evacuate along parts of the eastern Bay of Plenty coastline. The latest councils under emergency are Hauraki, Waikato and Whakatane. The others are Opotiki, Gisborne, Tairawhiti, Thames, Coromandel, Northland and Auckland. Up to 500 households in the Opotiki district are being told to leave their homes between Waiotahe and East Cape. Opotiki Mayor David Moore says people in the area should prepare in advance in case anything major happens.
Don't travel unless you have to, but if you feel unsafe, please try and make arrangements to go and stay with family and friends that may be on higher ground. Be prepared, water, all the normal things. Something to be quite aware of. We've got a history of sort of events on the roading. So, just be prepared the best you can and keep in touch with everyone.
The Whakatane acting mayor says mandatory evacuations in Ohope will keep people safe when the worst of the storm hits early tomorrow morning. Occupants of about 100 homes in West End Ohope and Ohiwa Harbour were ordered to evacuate this afternoon. Acting Mayor Leslie Inmick says the homes are low-lying and at risk of flooding.
If you're over in Ohope and you're worried at all about anything, then we recommend self-evacuating. And that's going to some friends or family for the evening, or we have an emergency centre where they could be taken care of. And it's really just the mandatory evacuation for those limited areas of West End and those on the very fringe of Ohiwa Harbour.
The council is advising other residents to stay home and check on vulnerable or elderly neighbours. Cyclone Gabrielle is bearing down on Tairawhiti just over a month since Cyclone Hail caused flooding, slips and power cuts across the region. Met Service has upgraded its weather warning to red for Gisborne, south of Tolaga Bay, putting the whole region under the most severe level of warning. Kate Green has been up the coast today.
The rain has been falling since yesterday evening. State Highway 35 from Opotiki to Gisborne is closing at 7 p.m, but local civil defence teams have already put blocks in place at Ruatoria and Te Springs. The Hikuwai River has risen more than 10 metres, and many normally small streams are now raging rivers spilling onto the roads. At least 5 evacuation centres have been set up in small towns along the coast. The message from Civil Defence is evacuate early, as help will be harder to come by in the dark.
Tairawhiti Civil Defence says all schools will close tomorrow, with the worst of Cyclone Gabrielle expected to hit the region in the early hours of tomorrow morning. It says businesses are also encouraging employees to work from home. Welfare centres at Ilminster Intermediate and the House of Breakthrough will be open from 6 o'clock this evening. Much of the North Island will continue to be heavily battered by rain and high winds this evening and overnight. Met Service meteorologist John Law says Northland, Auckland and Coromandel will be most affected.
The heaviest rainfall as we head through this evening will be places like Northland, Auckland and Coromandel. That's where we've got the heaviest rainfall as we head through the night time tonight, and particularly up and towards the higher ground of those areas, and also the higher ground of the eastern coast as well, places like Hawke's Bay and up and towards Gisborne.
John Law says 350 millimetres is expected in the mountain ranges in Tairawhiti and Coromandel up until tomorrow morning. He says northeastern coastlines will also get coastal swells. The Whangarei District Council is urging people in the city to consider evacuating this evening due to the risk of flooding. The council has been asking people in low-lying areas near the town basin to self-evacuate. Mayor Vincent Kukurulo says more widespread surface flooding is expected throughout the day. Residents on Great Barrier Island are worried about the safety of a local man who is adrift on his boat as Cyclone Gabrielle rattles the island. Orla Comiskey from the Kurak Irish pub says wind gusts are huge and it will be challenging for their friend whose boat lost its mooring amid the extreme weather.
He had some issues and that he didn't leave his boat. It is his home and he's out there somewhere. He's a fabulous character and much loved on this island, so I hope he's out there safe, and we do look forward to seeing him.
The Police Maritime Unit and Eagle helicopter attempted to approach the boat this morning, but conditions became too challenging and they had to return to land. Kiwi Rail has cancelled inter-islander sailings for 24 hours, affecting 12 sailings from 2 o'clock tomorrow morning. Picton Port is closed until 10 o'clock tomorrow night due to high wind and swell conditions. Kiwi Rail is also shutting rail lines down the North Island. Auckland lines are closed, and tonight Kiwi Rail will also close lines from Napier, Taranaki and Palmerston North down to Waikanae. It says the Wellington Rail network will remain open. Track inspectors will check Auckland lines in the morning, but trains won't be restarted before tomorrow afternoon at the earliest. The line between Picton and Christchurch will close tomorrow, with Kiwi Rail planning to inspect and reopen the line on Wednesday. And Wakakotahi has just announced State Highway 2 between Napier and Waidoa will be closed from 7 p.m. today for at least 12 hours because of slips and flooding. In other news, a Gloria Vale woman has told the Employment Court it's wrong to claim allegations of sexual abuse are treated casually at the Christian community. The Ministry of Health is reporting 8,396 new COVID-19 cases in the last week, including 3,508 reinfections. And the Kansas City Chiefs have won the Super Bowl, the biggest sporting event in the US, beating the Philadelphia Eagles, 38-35. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, dance is on the program with culture regular Malia Johnston with guest artist Rowan Pearce to talk spatial design for dance and his new work He Huia Kaimanua. Behaviour in the workplace, is it a good idea to eat lunch at your desk? That's if you are at work. We'll keep you informed with the tracking and impact of Cyclone Gabrielle. Keep it tuned to Nights with Karen Hay after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
And we're funded through New Zealand On Air. You're back with Lisa Owen next on Checkpoint. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. Cyclone Gabrielle is affecting the country, bringing severe weather to northern and central parts of Aotearoa, New Zealand. For the northern half of the North Island, from Taranaki and Taihape northwards, also for Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa. Rain with heavy falls, especially in the north and east. Easing or clearing later tomorrow. Gale east to southeasterlies, but severe gale in many places. Severe gale southwesterlies developing over Northland and Auckland later today, then easing tomorrow. From Whanganui to Wellington, also for Nelson, occasional rain becoming persistent in Wellington tomorrow. Gale or severe gale southeasterlies tonight and tomorrow morning. For Marlborough, showers turning to rain tonight with heavy falls. For Canterbury, cloud increasing. Isolated showers turning to rain tomorrow afternoon or evening. Otago and Southland, also for Bulla, Westland and Fiordland. Mainly fine, isolated showers in the afternoons and evenings south of Haast with possible thunderstorms and downpours for inland Otago and for Southland. Areas of fog early in the morning. And for Te Kohu, Chatham Islands, cloud increasing, rain and easterly gales developing tomorrow. The time is 8 minutes past 6. I'll have news headlines for you at 6:30.
Kia ora rā e ho, no mai, hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Power outages, evacuations and road closures from the far north to the Bay of Plenty. Cyclone Gabrielle isn't done with us yet. The Met Service says the storm is just halfway through and the next 24 to 36 hours are critical, with high winds and more rain incoming. There's already been evacuations in Whangarei, Opotiki and parts of Tairawhiti, where the coast road, State Highway 35, is closing from 7 p.m. Gabrielle has shut down ferries and trains in Auckland. Air New Zealand's cancelled almost all international and domestic flights to and from the super city. And Bluebridge and inter-islander ferry services have been cancelled for 24 hours from 2 a.m. tomorrow. Countdown has also announced that supermarkets will close early tonight, with most stores closing by 9 o'clock. Tens of thousands of people are still without power in Auckland, Coromandel and Northland, and could be for days. And that has forced some dairy farmers to dump milk. Northland Federated Farmers President and Dairy Chair Colin Hanna joins us now. Hi Colin, what are things like where you are at the moment weather-wise?
Weather-wise, well, it's raining strongly again. We had a little bit of a lull. We went down and got some things from the supermarket, but we're back to heavy rain again. To give you an update, since Gabrielle reared its head here in the north, up to 6 o'clock tonight, we have had 319 millimetres of rain.
And so what does that mean for people on farms?
What does that mean? The ground was sodden before Gabrielle came, and now it's just about impossible to get your tractors and machinery onto ground to cut crops that need to be dealt with. We've been, because of the weather, which is basically since October, we've had very limited windows of opportunity to cut hay or make silage.
And that means you're not set up, are you, for the winter if you can't get those things done?
You're absolutely correct. And that's where I think it's going to catch up with us. We've got plenty of feed right now, but we haven't been able to conserve that feed for winter.
So, Colin, what about the power situation? Because that presents problems as well. So do you know any idea how many farms are without power? And I understand that some milk has had to go south as well.
And you're correct. There's both North Power and Top Energy have had major outages across the whole region. I can't tell you exactly how many dairy farmers haven't been able to milk their cows, but it is a substantial number out of the total. And, some of these farmers, the last thing we want really is milk going down the drain. But also have to remember that it has to be safe for tanker drivers to be able to drive on some of these roads, and some of them are deteriorating and flooding. I have been out this morning checking my cattle, and I tell you what, I have underneath my ute is the cleanest it's ever been for a long, long time, because the water has been so deep, and so we've got to bear that in mind as well. And it doesn't look like it's going to abate until probably tomorrow.
So in terms of having to dump milk, is that because they lost power and refrigeration?
But dumped milk, it was be two things. Possibly the tanker wasn't able to get there, and the second thing is power to keep the refrigeration, to keep it down at 4 degrees, was probably the major reason.
So is there a bit of a scramble on for generators?
Oh, yes. We're appealing for generators all over the country at the moment. Send them north. We need them.
Yeah. And so, I mean, will there be enough to go around, or can people share them, or how can it work, Colin?
They can share them. If farmers are close together, could share a generator just to get the milking done, and that keeps the cows in a good condition to continue milking into the season. Because what happens, or what farmers will be afraid of, is that you delay a few milkings and their instincts kick in and say, oh, I'm going to dry myself off.
Yeah, so it could mean less supply further down the track.
And less money for a farmer.
Yeah. Well, tell us about that too, Colin. We've had a stinker of a summer so far, let's just call it, right? So, and I mean, if you make your living off the land, that's tough. So what problems do you anticipate further down the track?
Well, what we're anticipating down the track is that when winter strikes, we won't have any good quality conserved feed to particularly our autumn calving cows. Those are cows that are going to calve in, say, March, April, and they're going to provide you in Auckland the milk that you need for your lattes, etc. And those cows need good feed because they're going into a period of time when the feed quality starts to drop. Does that make sense?
Yep, got you.
And so my concern is that we're not going to have quality feed, and also feed in Northland, even though we grow grass all year round, it does diminish in the quantity, and as a result of that, we need supplementary feed to keep our animals in a good condition.
Colin, I really appreciate your time. All the best. And Colin Hanna there from Northland Federated Farmers, he's the president and the dairy chair, and a shout out there. They're looking for generators because, well, they need to carry on milking. The government's announced $11.5 million for community groups and NGOs in Auckland using unspent COVID funding. The money will go towards helping community providers meet increased demand, replenish their food banks, and some support for the disabled community. It's also scaling up the number of community connectors who can check in on people isolating. With many regions still dealing with the clean-up from the floods 2 weeks ago, Chris Hipkins acknowledges it's been a challenging start to the year for them and for community groups. The fund was going to be announced later this week, but the cyclone brought the decision forward.
Many people just haven't been able to catch a break. The need in the community is significant, and the effect of the repeated weather events has compounded that. Our social service agencies are stretched to capacity.
Cancelled flights in and out of Auckland means Chris Hipkins could miss his first day in the House as Prime Minister. He's hoping to get to Wellington tomorrow afternoon and deliver his opening speech to the House on Wednesday. Discussions are underway over whether the show can go on without him.
I am expecting Parliament will sit this week. I think there's just a logistical challenge that a number of members of Parliament are currently in Auckland, and we have to figure out how we can get them to Wellington so that they can participate in parliamentary proceedings, myself included. Having said that, I've been quite comfortable with being here in Auckland. It's given me the opportunity to visit the emergency management teams to see the on-the-ground preparation that's been taking place, and also, as I've indicated, to speak to some of those who have been affected by the recent weather events.
Chris Hipkins is warning things will get worse before they get better. The Coromandel Peninsula is feeling the effects of Cyclone Gabrielle, and locals are worried there's more to come tonight. A number of shops in Thames have shut for the day, while more are sandbagging to prevent against floods. Our reporter Finn Blackwell is there.
Cyclone Gabrielle has turned Thames's main strip into a ghost town. Locals here closing up shop, prepping for the worst. Vita Dryden is the co-owner of the Restore Eco Market. She says she's come back from Dunedin to check on her shop.
Managed to get back in last night, and we're just sort of playing it by ear. We get fresh deliveries in, so we sort of needed to come in and open up, but town is pretty dead, and I think everyone's hunkering down.
Vita Dryden says they've got sandbags and salt ice in case conditions get worse. That's something local Foursquare owner Narlin Patel is prepping for in similar fashion. He says they'll stay open till the power goes out for those who need last-minute supplies.
I've noticed a lot of shops closed today, and that doesn't bring people into the town. But all the people who are wanting to buy necessary stuff, they've been coming in and getting it.
And the duty manager at Boulevard Fine Wines and Spirits, Tash, says she's noticed just how many shops are shut for the storm.
A lot of things are closed today. I seen even KFC was closed by 4 o'clock yesterday, just, on the way to Pack and Save. So I think, there's going to be a little bit of an inconvenience for everybody.
And on the street, residents are prepping for what comes next.
We have all of our torches full of new batteries. We've got spare batteries. There's 3 of us and we have 30 litres of water.
Worried about I probably won't get home tonight. I've got to go to Hamilton tomorrow, so I get home tonight I probably won't get back in.
Everybody, stay away from the coast,
With more rain to come, the town of Thames and others like it will be bracing for a wild, windy night.
It is 17 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. It's not all bad weather. In fact, in the South Island, it's been a long, hot summer. And as a result, some Southland towns are abuzz with wasps. While they aren't new to the region, some pest controllers are bracing for a bigger problem that lasts longer. Tess Brunton has more.
All Pest Southland pest control owner Mike Bradley has been killing wasps for more than 40 years and says it's been a busy summer in Southland.
It's quite severe. And I say severe in the sense that it is ahead of other years, and maybe that's due to the many good days and so forth that we've had in the 30 plus.
Not only are there far more of them, he says there are also more hybrids of different sizes and colouring. In good weather, he's averaging at least 2 calls a day, while at the height of the season, they've been taking out 10 to 12 nests a week, when they would normally do about half that.
They have been quite ferocious. So for many years, wasps have always defended their nests. It's natural, it's Mother Nature protecting them. But over the last couple of years, we've noticed a great more ferocity from them.
Tackling the problem isn't easy. It requires powder to be pumped into nests at high pressure.
If you undertake to take them on, there is a grave risk in that. We wear full protective with full body suits, gloves, gumboots, and you need that because they will defend their nest to the last one.
Southland Bee Society member Jeff Scott has been busy clearing nests around Southland. He was recently contacted by 4 businesses in Ototo about their wasp problem.
When I went into town to talk to one of them, there was wasps on every window, every lamppost, every vehicle and stuff like that. So we went round and within probably less than an hour and a half I'd found 7 nests.
He says he found more nests on his next visit to the town. Southland's regional pest management plan doesn't class wasps as pests, which means the local council doesn't have to provide a control service. Jeff Scott says council land often has prime breeding conditions for wasps, and he wants Environment Southland to tackle the issue.
And I just think the councils need to start owning up and say, hey, listen, this is actually a pest problem with the potential to be fatal to someone that's allergic, and it's an escalating problem, especially in public areas.
He thinks the problem is going to get worse.
I call this a late start to the season because we had a really warm winter. So a lot of the nests that should have actually finished last autumn, a lot of them went through the winter. So what I actually noticed was queen wasps still appearing when we should have seen worker wasps out. So I actually think we're in for a longer season.
In Ototo, Hilda from Connect Cafe says wasps have opted to dine in when the mercury climbed recently.
We had, I think at one time, we had 10 inside the cafe. We haven't so much noticed them this week, so something's happened there.
She says a few businesses have had winged visitors and some of her customers were also noticing more wasps around. In Tiano, Chris Morrison has been volunteering to kill wasps in his community for years, taking out nests in the ground, in shrubs, in roofs, and even in a neglected boot. He reached out to the community last year, asking them to kill any queens flying around in September to December, before they can set up their nest.
Every nest that survives into winter will produce another 1,000 fertile queens.
He's already noticed a difference. While they're still around, he's struggling to find wasps in areas they used to be prolific. That's been great for residents, businesses and biodiversity.
Here in Te Anau, we've got a lot of restaurants with al fresco dining. And the last thing when you're sitting at a restaurant, the thing you want is to share your food and your beer with wasps.
Environment Southland has received 4 inquiries about wasps this financial year, down from 7 the previous year. The council says people can choose to manage wasps themselves or contact a pest controller.
More than 30,000 people are now confirmed dead after the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. United Nations aid vehicles have started arriving in Syria, where many survivors are feeling abandoned. A key problem is that rebel groups still control parts of Syria's northwest after years of civil war. The BBC's Quintin Somerville is in the rebel-held region.
A border and a catastrophe shared, but in the earthquake's aftermath, Syria and Turkey couldn't be further apart.
We've just crossed into Syria. At the border crossing, there were about a dozen aid trucks, fuel tankers, coming in. But actually, there were more refugees, more corpses coming out than there was aid coming in here.
The main street in Idlib's harem is gone. They waited for help here, but none came. It was here that Fadel Gadab's aunt and cousin's families all died.
There is no one alive here. Everyone is dead. We just need them to come in and dig the bodies up for burial. I don't know what else to say.
We travel further west. There are no aid convoys here, few signs of relief, but a lot of urgent need.
This was the town of Bissania. These were people's homes. They were newly built, but look at it now. 80% of this village is gone, and they've had hardly any help since the earthquake struck.
More than 100 homes have gone here, and much more besides. Abu Allah lost 2 of his children.
I started running like a madman in the streets, shouting, "Dear God!" It was then that I saw my wife and 7-year-old daughter alive. I kept on running in the streets until I saw them. She told me my children were gone.
Islamists are in control here. We were accompanied at all times by armed men who didn't interfere with our work, but it's made getting aid here more difficult. At the Bab al-Hawa hospital, they've no time for politics. With few staff, they've had to treat over 350 earthquake victims.
There's not enough medical staff to help people in normal situation without any catastrophe, without any earthquake, without any bombs, without any war. There's not enough medical staff.
Down the hallway lies Mohammed Gayath, just 3 months old. His parents were killed by the earthquake. He was found in the street by a neighbour. Mohammed is all alone. And Syria too again feels forsaken, disregarded by the world, in another hour of need.
To the US, where the Kansas City Chiefs have triumphed at the Super Bowl. But it was the Philadelphia Eagles who had extra fans today, with a couple of players joining them from this side of the world. A growing number of Australians are getting into American football, but today has seen the first Aussie players on the field in a Super Bowl. The ABC's Angus Randall joined some local fans to watch the game.
In Sydney's southwest, members of rugby league club the Bankstown Bulls are gathering to watch former Bulls junior Jordan Mailata make history.
You know, I'm glad he was on my team rather than the opposition.
Daniel Hachidi grew up with Jordan as he turned into a 203 centimetre, 166 kilogram behemoth. He was unable to score a rugby league contract, but made his way to the Philadelphia Eagles as an offensive tackle who protects the quarterback during plays. Jordan Mailata is the first Australian to play in a Super Bowl. Other Australians have been on the bench but never took to the field.
We can see that the pathway to success is quite evident through both the NRL players that we have and now an NFL superstar. So we're expecting a lot of inspiration from the kids that shows what potential they have.
Jordan Mailata's school principal, Susie Mabayad, thought he was bound for the stage rather than the football field.
The thing that attracted me about him, of course, initially was his voice, because he and his brothers, they all sang and they played musical instruments and they were quite talented. So I thought he was just going to move into the singing industry. And of course, you know, not knowing that on the other side, when he was playing his games and his football and having this just amazing ability to play anything.
He's joined at the Philadelphia Eagles by Aaron Sipos, who played 28 games for St Kilda in the AFL before turning to American football as a punter. That's where Australians have been most successful. Punters are tasked with kicking the ball as far and as high as possible. Former AFL player Nathan Chapman has been instrumental to bringing Australians over to America. He's the founder of Pro Kick Australia.
Once I had a go myself, didn't quite make it. I felt like it was a good chance to teach other guys and show them the ropes about how to do it properly. We knew it was going to take a few years to kick off, but we got that done. We sent over some really good talent, and a few years later we're still at it.
He says Australians can offer something special, but he's cautious about flooding the markets with athletes who may not have made it in the AFL or NRL.
There's a lot of players who feel like they want a second chance or even a first chance. Look, it is hard, and you just got to make sure that they're prepared to do the work and don't think it's just easy, because lots of guys have done it. So really, from that point of view, you know, the coaching that they get or the information they get has to be, you know, on point, and they've got to listen, because it's tough. There's a lot of guys in America who want the same spots, and we've got to make sure that we send the right athletes over with the right attitude.
That is about all we have time for this evening. Now, the Late News team's going to keep you updated throughout the night. If you missed anything from the program, you can find Checkpoint on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō, and tomorrow from 5 a.m, fingers crossed, it is Goodbye Gabrielle. First up will be live in Tairawhiti, Northland and the Coromandel, with high tide due to hit around 2 a.m. So they will have all the latest from 5 a.m. on first up. And as I said, going live to Tairawhiti and Northland and Coromandel, some of the hardest hit areas. Now, in the meantime, RNZ will keep you up to date with everything weather related overnight. So stay tuned, have a radio ready if you need to evacuate. Now, if you're in the north of the North Island, hunker down and stay safe. If you feel unsafe at any time, get to your local evacuation centre. Do not wait to be told to evacuate. Details are on your local civil defence website. And also remember, if life, health or your property is in danger, call 111 immediately. Kaua e wariwari te atatero I a mātou kōrero. Lots of stories and videos online. It is hard to keep up to date. Things are changing all the time. So go to our webpage if you need to catch up. Stay safe and dry overnight. And first up, we'll see you at 5 a.m. We'll catch you later in the day.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Good evening. Tēnā tātou. I'm Evie Ashton. Fire and Emergency says there's been 305 111 calls in Northland, Auckland and Coromandel in the 12 hours since 6 o'clock this morning. It's prioritising its response where life and safety is at risk. Mandatory evacuation orders have been issued for hundreds of properties in the Eastern Bay of Plenty. The Defence Force is among those helping evacuate people between Ohope Beach, near Whakatane and East Cape. The storm is due to coincide with high tide just after 1 a.m. A week after the devastating earthquakes, the number of victims in Turkey and Syria has risen past 33,000. And American rapper David Jolicoeur, one-third of the groundbreaking group De La Soul, has died aged 54. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather is at 7 o'clock.
I'm Catherine Ryan. On 9 to noon tomorrow, the latest on Cyclone Gabrielle. Buy now, pay later transactions are closing in on $2 billion, but budgeting helplines say they're seeing more calls for help than ever. Our US correspondent, and we find out why Wairarapa locals are seeing red over lower speed limits. And we meet Suli Tuatope, the award-winning doctoral public health researcher whose dance videos during COVID lockdowns went viral. With me on 9 to noon on RNZ National.
We'll keep you updated throughout the night on what's happening with Cyclone Gabrielle. Right now, it's time for Trending Now with me, Evie Ashton. And to kick us off, The Detail. And today's deep dive is into youth vaping. Are new regulations too little, too late?
Kia ora, I'm Matthew Scott. 10 years ago, about 1 in 5 young Kiwis were popping out for smoko. Now, it's more like 1 in 20. While cigarette butts have disappeared from high schools and university campuses, there's a new kind of puffing going on. Vapes are here and seemingly here to stay.
Well, the rate of cigarette smoking is coming down. The percentage of young people vaping daily has more than tripled in the past 3 years.
It's an epidemic. Anecdotally, what I'm seeing in our school is a growing number of young men who are vaping. Boys have become seduced by it. We're seeing non-smokers enter into a marketplace that we've never seen before.
Last year's Action for Smoke-Free survey showed almost 20% of Year 10 students vape regularly.
Our toilets have never smelt like passion fruit before in 153 years. They smell like passion fruit most days.
But vapes aren't all bad.
Smoking tobacco kills more than 8 million people each year. 5,000 of them us, New Zealanders, 5,000. It's a staggering number. And if vaping's a gateway to cigarettes, that's a catastrophe. But if it helps people reduce their cigarette use and even get off cigarettes entirely, that's a personal and public health victory of real significance.
So today on The Detail, a shake-up of the vape industry is on the way.
The government is planning to introduce new restrictions on the sale of vapes. Store locations, flavour descriptions and the strength of disposable products are all on the table.
But is it a case of too little too late when it comes to regulating what's become a booming industry? Rachel Thomas is a health reporter for Stuff in Wellington.
A proposal on the table at the moment is one that would see flavour names restricted to reduce the attractiveness of vaping products to young people. So instead of flavour names like gummy bears or peach iced tea, these could be really plain. So I guess maybe just menthol or mint or something like that. Nothing that's jazzed up. Because I think at the moment, it's very clear that they're marketed as appealing to young people, and they're marketed as kind of interesting and fun and tasty. And that's what we're seeing and why we're seeing such a strong uptake in young people with vaping.
These single-use vapes are cheap and popular among young people. But now they're in the firing line with plans to reduce their strength and introduce product regulations.
Also, these single-use vapes that we see, they're about $10 each. That's affordable for most teenagers if they want something that's going to enable them to sort of fit in and feel like they've got something cool to do. They're very tasty. They some of them taste like ice cream. It's ridiculous. And they're so accessible. They're everywhere.
Right, so cheaper, and also, that marketing it's markedly different to like the classic cigarette, right, where you might have gold or menthol or I don't know, Lucky Strike Reds or something. Instead, we're talking about ice cream and goody gumdrops and passion fruit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing is that these vape stores are also really appealing to young people. You've either got kind of shosha stores, which have these sort of colourful fonts, this sort of Rasta vibe, or you've got these sort of minimalist-looking stores that almost resemble Apple stores that, there's always like some hipster with like a septum piercing behind the counter and like cool music playing, and it's just very young people, almost like techie focused. So they draw young people in. So that's another part of the proposal on the table at the moment, is that specialist vape retailers would not be able to operate within a certain proximity of schools or sports grounds. That would restrict where they could actually set up shop, which I guess in turn means that they're slightly less accessible to young people filtering out of school.
The entrance to a Porirua primary school just across the road from a vape shop. Vapelicious was once a dairy. The owner says he made the change after car parks were removed and the business became unviable.
Do you think that will make like a significant difference? For example, you're in Wellington, right? I understand there are, I think it's 26 vape stores in Wellington. but the majority of those are sort of like in downtown and in the CBD itself. Do you think that them not being able to set up shop next to a school will have any impact on youth take-up?
To be honest, no. I mean, I think the horse is bolted. Like, you go down Cuba Street and there's 4 or 5 vape stores easily within that immediate sort of precinct. Kids are going to Cuba Street on the weekend. They're hanging out there anyway. So if they want to vape, not selling it next to a school is not going to stop them from doing it. It's not like kids only spend time around schools. We know that they have lives outside of that, and, they could get into the city. So, yeah, I think one of the problems is, we've got this smoke-free 2025 goal, and that was announced way back in 2011.
Smoke-free Environments, Controls and Enforcement Amendment Bill, third reading.
The Honourable Tariana Turia.
Anyone who has listened during the committee stages of the bill would have underscored the need to legislate to achieve the vision of a tobacco-free Aotearoa 2025.
But we didn't have a plan on that till 2021. So at the time that was announced, back in 2011, I think it was March, vaping was actually promoted as a tool to enable people to quit. So the government went really hard on that at the time, saying, hey, you smoke, you want to stop, here's a tool that's 95% safer.
Vaping is not smoking. It's the nicotine that people are addicted to. It's the thing they miss when they quit smoking. But overall, nicotine doesn't cause cancer. It doesn't cause heart disease. It's the smoke and the products of combustion. So with vaping products, they can certainly help some people quit smoking, and they are much less harmful than smoking.
And we had very limited research on that at the time, and so they sort of just went with that line. And so what happened is it created this vacuum, and in that time, tobacco companies saw an opportunity. They bought up these vape companies, invested billions in these next generation products, and we've seen them marketed in these ways that are very appealing to young people. So now the government's having to backpedal and go, oh, shoot, now we've got to put these advertising restrictions in. Now we've got to prohibit them around schools, around early childhood centres. Now we've got to ban them in cars. It's all this sort of like too little too late. And I feel like it's almost like a mea culpa for the government now, going, oh my goodness, now we need to restrict these products to young people. This is sort of like this unintended consequence of us having the smoke-free 2025 goal.
So have you kind of seen the government messaging on this, sort of change in real time?
Yeah, a wee bit. I mean, I do remember being at an announcement with, I think it was Jenny Salisa at the time, and they were very strong on vaping. They were very supportive of vaping, and it was almost seen as this like magic bullet in a sense to bringing our smoking rates down to that under 5% goal, which is the smoke-free 2025 goal.
It's a tool that is effective, especially for adult smokers. The advice I've been getting from the Ministry of Health, from various groups that they've worked with, is that vaping, especially from smokers who've tried to quit smoking for many, many years, vaping seems to be the one tool that is actually effective for them quitting smoking.
And Dame Tariana Turia was there. She's obviously the former Te Pāti Māori member, and I spoke to her afterwards, and she was saying, no, vaping's not the answer. This is not the kaupapa.
I don't believe that vaping has the impact and effect that they are claiming.
And she was really strongly against it. And I remember thinking, oh, she's kind of a lone voice in this. And now we've almost seen the government and major parties almost catch up with her and now have to backpedal and say, oh, shoot, now we've got to try and reduce youth vaping.
Yeah, it seems like even like outside of government, there's kind of two sides at play here. There's people who are talking about vaping as there's a potential benefit to society if it can curb smoking rates, but at the same time, if we don't necessarily know about all of the health effects or health impacts, then it could be a problem. And I guess, is one side winning? Is it a balanced debate?
I think in a way we're just going to have to learn the hard way, because we can put out this messaging and we can create these restrictions, but youth particularly are already taking up vaping in insane numbers. They you just have to see the amount of stand downs that are linked to vaping. I think it was 75% of stand downs in 2020 and 2021. Smoking or vaping was part of the reason. That was an RNZ story, actually. But yeah, we're going to have to see these stories come out of, the harms that vaping's created, because I think it's almost that perception at the moment that it won't happen to me. So people are going to keep doing it until it actually starts having a tangible effect on their health.
Our lungs are really designed just to breathe clean air, and if we breathe anything different from that, it is likely going to cause some differences.
This is Dr. Kelly Burrows. She's an associate professor at Auckland University's Bioengineering Institute. She's been researching vaping for years. Can you tell me a little bit about bioengineering? What kind of broadly does that bioengineering, the study of, entail?
Bioengineering is really just one form of engineering where we apply mathematical and sort of physics or biology principles to solve problems. So we apply engineering techniques to solve problems about the human body. Things like create new